What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another live watercolor painting session. Yes, we will be back for the foreseeable future. Everything seems to be looking better. Hey, Uncle Earl, thank you for that comment. Hey, Giselle. Marsha, this is set to be for 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Eastern Daylight Time. So whatever time it is in DC, 4 o'clock p.m. is the time that we're going to be on here. So today we are going to experiment with a palette that you see here on the screen down here. This is a setup with watercolors in pans. So it's actually a set that I bought that's actually pretty cheap. It's a cheap portrait color set, but I'll talk more about the concept of these pans as we continue on. Now, anyone that has been doing watercolor for a long period of time already knows about the pans, and you may have your own opinions about them. So don't be afraid to, let us know what you think about them. And we're gonna start off with a drawing, as you see here. Just very simple drawing. The model, his name is Rob. He's not from the Billiard Academy. He's from this art group that I went to in Baltimore a little while back. So I deliberately chose this reference because his head is turned closer to profile. So drawing wise, this will actually be easier to follow along with than the one that I chose last week. So we're cropping his head a little bit so that his hair is pretty much going to be mostly cropped off. The top of his hairline is going to be there. That's because this is relatively small. It's an 8 by 10. Hey, Mark L. Welcome, welcome. It's a 8 by 10, and the paper is listed in the description box for you. So I'll be drawing for a little bit here, and I know that a lot of people, at least a lot of the viewers, may not know what has been going on, but last week they were doing some work in the apartment, and there was a leak in the walls of the restroom, but they located the source of the leak last week. So everything seems to be going by a little bit better, but that's why I didn't right away schedule the following days. These streams are supposed to be Tuesday through Friday. Tuesday watercolor, Wednesday oil paint, and Thursday acrylic, and Friday pastel. So a lot of stuff. We've got a lot going on here. We're looking at these angles. When I'm drawing, I typically like to look for angles. You know, what is this angle here as opposed to like, doing this kind of measuring thing. I like to look at the angles. We'll be here for a while. I'm going to take my time with this drawing. From what I noticed last week when I did the watercolor, I kind of half-fasted the drawing a little bit. So we're gonna take a little bit longer. And remember that these streams are set to be about 3 hours at a time. So not a short stream by any means. These are long streams. More like podcasts. So you want to play these videos on the side while you're doing chores, doing your own paintings. I'm looking at the spacing here from the nose to there, so that seems to be about pretty good. So have these videos playing, on the side while you're doing homework, say, or you're in school or something, or you're doing homework assignments for school. Cast shadow. And I apologize, I'm a bit behind. Hey, Randy. Um, So I'm a bit behind on the comments, because I've been in and out of the apartment, so I haven't really had time to really do anything. I just got back to the apartment like an hour ago, so I haven't had much time to do a lot of stuff. But online students, I did post the next episode. You can also just use the entire playlist for project one. Let's fix the angle of his nose here. I also don't want too many lines. By the way, what you just saw me do with the eraser, you want to do at most, uh, say 10 times. You don't want to use the eraser that much because you're going to mess up the paper. So we're learning from trial and error here. Welcome, Randy. All right, so for the eyes, I don't want every little detail. What I want is the placement of the eyes, the angle between the eyes. So again, the model is, his name is Rob. He's from this painting group that I went to a couple weeks ago in Baltimore. With watercolor, you want to be very cautious with how you draw. You want to have just enough information to start to go in with washes of paint. And with this palette here, this pan palette setup, we're gonna work a little more loose than what you saw last time. Last time it was more like playing it safe. But whenever you have facial hair, especially this kind of light colored facial hair, you want to draw that out like right away. And you see that in a lot of John Singer Sargents. You see the pencil drawing underneath. So what I've learned is to go in with the washes for the skin tone first. So we're going to leave this behind here. So yeah, I'm behind on the comments. Someone asked about, what the experience is like doing all these different materials and how it, what's it like to do the different materials. And they all benefit one another in so many different ways. Watercolor teaches me to, draw more, with my outlines, be a little bit more cautious. Watercolor is also, I would arguably, it's better to travel with than to travel with acrylics or oil paints. And that's because look at this palette, right? It's like, look at my hand. My hand covers, the palette is smaller than my hand. So, if you can travel with a palette like that, well, all of a sudden, your materials is going to take up this really small footprint in your bag or in your car. It's a really good material to travel with. And like I said, you want to erase very sparingly. So be careful with not erasing too much. Now, like I always say, I have a tendency to make the distance between the nose and the mouth too long. So, and his nose is pointing down slightly. So we'll do this correction here. Notice how I hold the pencil all the way from back here. Okay, so the ear fits somewhat back here. His head's actually a little bit longer on the picture than in real life, and that's just photographic distortion. Watercolor Tuesdays is also going to be good for your drawing as well, since I do spend a lot more time with the drawing. So take your time with the drawing. Neck is going to be down there. Yeah, take your time with the drawing. Back of his hair up there. Okay, so that should be good. Last thing we'll do is guesstimate where his iris is going to be. Somewhere about there. And somewhere about there. Okay. So that's pretty good. Now we're going to work a little backwards from what we did last time. And this is where the masking tape or whatever they used, not masking tape, but some kind of gel that people put. So say they want their highlight to always remain here, this highlight to always remain here, here, here. So yeah, in the future we'll mess around with that, but for the time being, I'm gonna just let it be as it is. And this is a red here. So a little bit about these pan watercolors for people that don't know about them. These are actually, from what I've read, the same as the watercolor tubes. So you can make these by pouring out the tubes in the pan and then just letting it dry over time. So this is the red. Is this just called I think a primary red or something, but it's a little bit less orangey, so it's closer to the blue. So I'm putting a bunch of water on this, and you're going to see how we're going to use this. So we're going to create gradations with it, basically on the fly. So starting off with your darker areas, say right here. So the pan watercolors allow you to use basically less of the material than you would if it was just a tube. So see how you can create this gradation here. And when you're using 100%, now you see it there, when you're using like 100% cotton, it absorbs the water pretty well compared to the cheap stuff. So these are just practices that I've done with the cheap stuff. And you can see how it just like gets all kind of crinkly. So cheap stuff will do that, but the cheap stuff is still good for practice. So even in the shadow, I'm actually going to put this tone because this wash is going to dry, and you got to be careful you got to protect your highlights. See how I'm just moving that wash across? So different than what you saw me do last time. And we're going to preserve that highlight there. Just like I said last time, you got to find the highlights, isolate them, and protect them. But it's nice to be able to use just red. That's why there's such little mixing space on these palettes, because this is a metal one, so I don't really have to mix much. I basically just use it to dab off the watercolor. Even into the hair, I can push it into the hair. So different from what you saw last time. I'll just let this wash kind of come off the brush. And we'll let this go all the way down here. Back to the red. Appreciate all of you that have left a like. Okay, thank you. Appreciate all of you that are here. I know this is unexpected, but once all this stuff is fixed or figured out, we will have the streams be 4 days a week, and you don't have to guess or anything. And the reason I'm doing this with the light first is that the paint has a tendency to drip down to the bottom. And here's where we have to be careful right there. Notice how I just barely made it to that mark. Be very careful with that because once you lose the white, you're not getting it back. See how it tends to drip? So just pull the wash all the way out. Even if it looks weird, don't worry about it looking weird. It's going to look weird at first. And again, straight red. And let the paper have a chance to buckle a little bit. As we go in with more layers, it'll kind of even out. This is what makes watercolor portrait, in my opinion, so challenging, is maintaining your highlights. So you have to have a really strong intuitive sense of where your highlights are going to fit. Luckily, portraiture makes it quite predictable. So obviously there'd be some highlights there. And under here, there pretty much aren't any. But that white of the sclera, I'm going to leave white for now. Because I don't want to go into it with pink. Because we don't want to give him pink eye, basically. So that's why we're doing that. I'm going to follow along the corner of the nose. Completely forgetting about light and shadow in the beginning. Another thing that makes this, that's another thing that makes this so difficult. And you can put pink in the iris, just not in the sclera. See how we left the white there for the sclera? And see, as you layer onto the dry paint, see that it'll look darker. So that's another interesting thing about watercolor. This is the same red, but it's starting to look darker as we're layering like this. See that? It starts to look darker as you layer onto it again. So how's everyone doing today? How was everyone's week? It has been a week since I last saw you. And here's where it's gonna get all interesting. Like I said, that you can reactivate your watercolors. So I can take watercolor from there as long as I've preserved my highlights. I can take this and add it onto almost anywhere I want. So how was everyone's week? I'll put this in the iris, but I'll preserve the sclera. Okay, so give this a chance to buckle and it'll all even out as we go along. Now we can go ahead and start to draw. So basically ink into the painting. So this is a burnt umber. And be careful not to lose your drawing. Once you lose a highlight, it's gone. And don't worry about the edges drying sharp because you can always reactivate the watercolor. Not always. There will be a time where this dries enough that you can't reactivate it. On the paper, that is. And don't be afraid to use more water, especially if you're coming in from a oil painting or acrylic painting background. No, you cannot reactivate oil paint once it dries. It's dry. But thanks for the question, Randy. It's a special ability that these watercolors have. It's unique to the watercolor. This is just burnt umber. So, for example, you can't just let the oil paint stay in a pan and then go into it with linseed oil. It won't bring it back. We're gonna go in with brown, but just on the outside. Then we're gonna add black to make this a gray. This is where the attraction to watercolor comes from. I think it's just the ease of cleanup. It's easy to travel with. It's fast, you know, if you're not being all super careful about your drawing. But with portraiture, this is critical. And with watercolor, you have to accept some a little less accuracy in your drawing than you would get with, say, acrylic or oil paint. And that's just because you don't have white. You have the white of the paper, but you don't have white paint. You do have white paint, obviously, you can buy it, but it's not, from my readings, it's not watercolor, it's a gouache. And it acts totally different. It's called a Chinese white that you can buy. And you see in some sergeants, he used a lot of it, and it cracked. And you can actually do this. You can get white watercolor, put it on thickly on your palette, and watch how it'll crack over time. I've seen it happen to the white paint that I was using when I first started with this. So I don't recommend it to use the white. And if you have to, use it sparingly. Now we're going in with the cast shadow. Now with the black, we'll start to put in the parts of the shirt, and then we'll use this for the hair. Some of the watercolor aesthetic showing through there. So as you put in these washes of watercolor, you can create different textures, different effects by how much water you put and at what area. See these little drips? So you can let it dry a little bit more, then add even more water to it, like that. And you see this in a lot of, see that? Wait for that. So you see this in a lot of watercolors. And now you can push it down. Unfortunately, it gets to the tape. So it might undo the tape a little bit, but anyway, it creates this texture that you wouldn't see in any other. See that? I mean, too bad the camera doesn't really capture it too well, but it creates an effect that you don't really get in acrylic. And I'm guessing it's because the watercolor doesn't dry as fast. Doesn't become touch dry as fast as it does with as acrylic does. And when you're layering a dark wash over top of something, I mean, literally above something light, you gotta be careful not to use too much water because once it drips onto that, it's gone. But see how we can create these watercolor, basically, I've got no other word for it than textures. It's unique to watercolor. So if there are any watercolor painters in here, let me know. Of course, just using the water. We're going to create our edges. Or if anyone's ever worked with watercolor and said that's not for me, that's valid as well. I know how difficult they are. But they don't have to be that difficult. Now we've given this enough time to dry, and of course it's buckling a little bit, but as we go along, it will autocorrect. Now we're gonna go into planes, smaller planes. These were the big ones, isolating the light and shadow. Mainly isolating the light from the highlight is what that was. Now we can do little things like this. And creating a nice gradation is an art form unto itself in watercolor. And it comes with time and practice. And that's the another challenge really with the watercolor is you don't get immediate results like you do with at least from my experience. I'll learn as I go. Hey Lisa. Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be back. So scary week not being here. I'm glad to be back as well. Thank you. Guess you've used them to make set designs. Oh, cool. Yeah, there's a lot of cool effects you can get from them. Yeah, set designs. That's pretty neat. It's like working in a theater. Oh, thanks, Casella. Yeah, we've got 20 something people here. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Glad to be back. Anyone that may be new, the schedule is Tuesday through Friday. Yep, pretty much a full-time live stream here on YouTube. If, of course, YouTube permits, which of course it does. Tuesday is watercolor. Wednesday is oil paint. Thursday is acrylic. Friday is pastel. Why, you ask? Do I do all these different materials? And I say, why not? I think they will all eventually benefit everyone. And plus, I've been doing oil painting streams or videos for a long time. I've been painting for 16 years. At least, trying to paint professionally, 16 years. Been drawing and painting all my life. And I'm 33 at the time of this video. So it's been a while. Hey, him, ASF. Thanks. I'm glad you like to see the different mediums. Now, I also want to show that the fundamentals are universal. Light and shadow, as you see here, different planes, those smaller planes. Subdivision of planes, perspective. The fundamentals are universal. It's just a different order of operations, basically. Different order than acrylic, or different order than pastel. This is the polar opposite of pastel. You could do this in oil paint somewhat. Obviously, the paint would still be wet, but yeah, you can do this with the other wet pigments, but not so much with the dry ones. Hey, Marsha. No luck chatting from iPad. Oh, that's strange. So you wrote you pill and watercolor, pastel, concentrating in oil paint for now. Cool, cool. Yeah, we will be doing oil paint tomorrow. Same time. 4:00 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So mainly for the color, I've been using red for my skin tones. And if you use more of it, then you can create the red for the lips. So the color mixtures have been pretty easy. I'll throw in a little bit of yellow ochre, which will actually be a little bit cooler. Relative to the red. Yellow ochre. So I'll go ahead and start to add more washes for these smaller planes. And as I get more comfortable with the material, I'll start to get faster. But perhaps you might want me to be working a little more slowly. Depends on what you're trying to do. You said hard switching the oil from watercolor. Darks have to go on first. Yeah, exactly. With water, it's reverse. Yeah, it is weird to switch around. That's why it's so difficult for oil painters to do watercolor unless you're sergeant. No matter what the material, always watch out for 90 degrees. This is not 90 degrees, as you can tell. And I tend to hold the paper towel on my hand. It's just preference. Once it gets too loaded with water, I'll get a new one. I'll add some more depth to the color and the skin tones. Again with the yellow ochre. And of course, before we take a break, we'll add the wash for the background. Because as we continue to develop the skin tones, it's going to be really important to have the tonality of the background. And of course, you'll take the background as a chance to fix the drawing. So now this is just yellow ochre. Little drawing things like that we may be able to fix with just using water. So back-to-back washes here. So you gotta be real patient with the watercolors. As they dry, they do sink in. And it could also be the cheaper watercolors that are doing that. But it's just something to factor in. Yes, Giselle, yes, they are. These are a portrait set that I bought. And the idea is that with watercolor, you don't really end up mixing that much. In my, at least in my studies of watercolor. So it kind of makes sense to have. So for example, I've got yellow ochre, raw sienna, burnt sienna, basically all the earthy looking reds, which are vital to skin tones. The idea is that you don't really mix very much and you use the transparency and the layering. Transparency of the paint and the layering of the colors. It's a theory. I'm very new to watercolor, so I'm not going to say whether or not it's true. It's just a theory. But it's part of the fun, I think, for these streams. You know, I'm coming into this as not an expert on watercolor. You know, things like that sinking in, which of course this is gonna all sink in a little bit, but you know, being able to work with that, like how do you work with that? And I know this is unconventional, this little scrubby motion, but it's just something that I've picked up from oil painting and perhaps something that I will not do as much. I might end up being more deliberate with my mark making over time as I have more experience with watercolor. Oh no, it's not expensive. This was about $20 at Michael's. No, it's not expensive. You can make your own too. You just put your um, paints, your tube paints inside of a pan. These little pans, and you can make your own. So no, not very expensive. Now, whether or not they're any good, I don't know. And you'll notice that I didn't put them in the description. I usually in the description box I'll put the materials that I'm using, but this is literally the uh, third sketch that I've done with these. So, well, you'll find out what I think about them or this whole concept. What I'm finding is the pans are making me use more water than I would without the pans, which is good and bad. Watercolor, in my opinion, I think the watercolorists, like really experienced watercolorists, tend to work with more water anyway. See how this is buckling, so I'm definitely gonna have to go in with the background. The other approach didn't do this as much because I didn't apply as much water. So as a result, it looked a little bit more like an acrylic. Yeah, it does let you work more on your technique as opposed to just mixing. That was a mystery to me not too long ago, like last week. You know, looking at a bunch of watercolor paintings, like some of them end up looking like oil paintings or acrylic paintings, and you could do that with the tubes in theory because you could just, just work mostly straight from the tubes. Whereas these force you to, work more with the water. So I don't know. I find that to be interesting. Now each one of these little planes is now going to be an individual little wash. Okay, so let's go into the background now. Take this as an opportunity to adjust the background, and then before we take a break, we'll go back into that. So I'm going to use the tubes, of course, for the background because this palette doesn't have a green. So this is sap green and burnt umber. Mostly sap green. Hey Hansel dog, welcome, welcome. Whoops. Oh, no worries. Trust me, this the pace of this one is a lot slower than my other stuff. Mainly because the drawing in the beginning and these washes take up a lot more time than what I'm used to. So we're mixing a generous amount of paint on this little pan. I know you can't really see it. Well, not pan, but this mixing space. So this is burnt umber and sap green. It's an exaggeration from the background in the picture. So I'm changing it up a little bit. So notice that the nose needs to point down more than I have it. Maybe to about there, just a small. And this is a little more round. than what I have. Like I said, in this sense, the watercolor behaves somewhat like acrylic or oil paint, especially if you use the tube. But I had to for the background. And because most of the skin tones in the washes are going to be really, light for a while, I wanted this dark. And it'll settle in as well once it dries. It's not going to look this dark. Now his forehead looks a lot longer in the picture. Mostly due to photographic distortion. Oh yeah, yeah. Hansel dog, I did. Thanks for asking. No, you're the first to ask. Yeah, I'm still in the apartment, and it looks like they've fixed. They've found what was wrong with the leaking in the walls in the bathroom, and they fixed the pipe, but they have to still redo the drywall. So that's still gonna be a thing. I think tomorrow they're gonna come by and do an estimate. It was all kinds of wild. At first, it sounded like they were gonna come and just tear the walls down right away. Um, that's because they thought it was some kind of emergency. Like there was gonna be huge structural damage if they didn't act right away. But it looks like everything kind of just worked out, and it at least fingers are crossed. That was the end of that. So hopefully everything should be okay after that. But yes, I'm back in the apartment, thankfully. Yeah, and we'll be staying here. So no having to relocate right away. So it's a huge relief for me. Huge relief for me. Now, like I said, we're gonna go back into this before I go into onto break. You can also get traveling kits like this for landscape as well, which is another one I'm gonna teach myself is the landscape. See some of the green in the shadow. Make that shadow nice and dark. So let that be all kinds of dark because it is gonna fade or sink in, I guess we'll call it. But yeah, watercolor landscapes is something I'm interested in learning as well. So again, it'll look dark for now, and it should sink in. And if it doesn't, it's still dark enough that it should be no problem. So we're past the hour. I totally didn't see that. So we're gonna have to take a break. And I just want to cover as much of this as I can. Give it time to sink in. And we will return to it again. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that this is any easier to use it this way, but it's just something I'm trying out. So yeah, let's just let that dry. Of course, I keep messing around with the hair, but I'll just let that be for now. Hey, Grace Murphy. Oh, you're on the other YouTube account. Welcome, welcome. No worries about being late. I'm actually gonna go on break, but I'll be back. I'm using these watercolor pans, so it's a little different. I didn't put it on the description box yet because not sure if I'm gonna recommend it or not. It's just something that I'm trying out right now. Tube colors are seems more saturated. Yeah, yeah, they are. They're a little bit, I guess, thicker and different. It's different. I can't really piece together, all the major differences behind it. But yeah, we'll take a break, and as usual, when we return, we'll get into even more of the subtleties of the face. Maybe focusing more with this little area here, trying to add as much specificity as we can. So don't go anywhere unless you absolutely have to. We're going to take a break and we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Alrighty, I have returned. So let's get into the subtleties for this one. And yeah, the tubed watercolors, I think they are definitely a tad bit easier to use, especially when you're covering like a broad area like that. Um, but whether or not they're better, still, I mean, technically they're the same thing. It's just they're wet on the palette. So we'll figure it out as we go. So yeah, time to isolate the form in that area and basically start to refine it. I'm gonna go in with yellow ochre. And it is a little tougher to have a thicker consistency of paint with the pans, which is to be expected because you need to use more water. But I think once I get used to it, once anyone gets used to it, I think that you'll be able to use it to your benefit. You know, like I said, you can reactivate the watercolor. So here, For example, I can still reactivate it. It hasn't been that long. It hasn't even been 2 hours, so I can tap into it with paper towel. And it lifts up a little bit, as you see there. But not as much as it would with anything else. So like I said, you're gonna have to leave some drawing things to be less accurate. And that's okay. I wonder if this is dried. It's dry enough. Yeah, I expected that to even out, and it's evened out here a tad bit. So this little buckle ended up going here. Excuse me. So this flattened out a little bit more, thankfully. I'll go in with the red. Not quite sure what this red is, but let's see what it is. Maybe it's closer to the orange. I don't know yet. Yeah, it's more of a brownish orange. So I would say it's probably closer to a burnt sienna. What this is. Watercolor can also have a certain aesthetic to it. So it's not like I necessarily want my watercolors to look like oil paintings. We've been able to do that with acrylic. And that was kind of a goal, but with watercolor, I want to explore more of the watercolor aesthetic like this, even though the hair is, incorrect. Like it looks watercolor. So I kind of like that aesthetic to it. I hope everyone is staying safe out there. I know that there's a hurricane out there. Hopefully everybody's okay. I got some students in Georgia and Florida. Ellen and Mark. Hope you're all okay. Use some of the green with the black. The eyes. I haven't really used this one either. This is a pink. So I'm wondering if it's going to look pink or if it's going to look blue relative to everything around it. And it looks pink. That's actually a pretty useful color. So yeah, eventually we're going to work our way up to the white of the paper. Like we just did there, but pretty much everywhere else. It seems like the key color in here is yellow ochre. It is a vital color for acrylics. Not acrylics, but yes, acrylics. Acrylics and watercolor. It is a vital color in the wet, uh, well, in the non-oil paint. How else do I describe it? In the non-oil paints. Even in oil paint, yellow ochre is super important, but you can get by without it. Cautious there, don't want to lose the highlight. I'm using this burnt sienna again. So I'm going all around this little section here as we add more realism. The question I'll ask for everybody, the 20 of you that are here. Question is, and feel free, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. It's not mandatory. Question for everybody is, what's your favorite pizza? Just a random question. Bet you thought I was gonna ask, where in the world are you? I know I asked that question too much. So what's your favorite pizza? Curious. Or maybe you don't like pizza. You could say that also. Just so we get to know each other. This is a long live stream, so I'd welcome any kind of YouTube friendly conversation. My mom's favorite used to be the meat lovers or whatever. I think it was it had pepperoni. I think it even had like steak. All kinds of crazy stuff. I think my favorite pizza is anything spicy. I'm going through a spicy phase. Lisa, you wrote pepperoni. Yeah, pepperoni is pretty good. Hansel dog, you don't like it as much, but if you have to, you'll get pepperoni. I understand. I usually put peppers on pepperoni. Like when I buy like a DiGiorno pizza, I get the pepperoni, and then I put habanero peppers on it. I haven't been brave enough yet to put this. I have yeah, I know this is crazy, but anyone that can identify what pepper this is, let me know if you know what pepper it is. I know what it is because I ordered it. I'm gonna do a still life painting of, I have 20 of these. I haven't been brave enough to cut this up and put it on a pizza because you're not supposed to do that. Uh, you're not even supposed to touch it with your hands, which is why I didn't touch it with my hands. But yeah. Oh, that's what it's called, Hawaiian. That's what my mom's favorite pizza was, the Hawaiian. Bacon, pineapple. That's what it was. I even tried to make my own pizzas back in the day. I got into pizza when I was a kid, watching the Ninja Turtles. Michelangelo always eating the pizza. Always throwing the slice of pizza onto Master Splinter. Ghost pepper, yes, pretty close. And no, it's not a serrano pepper. Ghost is pretty close. But no, it's not a ghost pepper. It's definitely something you don't want to mess with. I tell you that much. But yeah, I'll probably chop up the smallest piece of it and put it on a slice of pizza. And I'll probably regret it for a couple hours. And there's no way I'm gonna video myself eating that thing. Everyone's asked me that, and this is not happening. No way. There's enough videos of that on the internet. I don't need to add to it. But especially during and post pandemic, that pepper was really popular because people would video themselves eating it and get all kinds of reactions on the internet. I feel bad for the ones that did eat it and only got maybe like 200 views for it. Like that's just sad. Like all that pain that they went through for 200 views. So the pans do make it easier to get into subtlety just because you have more colors available to you. Hansel though, why did you order it? You're afraid of it? Because I wanted to paint it. I wanted to do a still life painting of it. And I just also wanted to have it for however long they'll last till they go bad. And then when they go bad, I'll start to go bad. I'll dry some of them, pickle some of them, and save the seeds to grow more of them. It's just I'm just crazy. Use some of the green. Yeah, this palette's lacking a green, and I can always buy another pan and put it in here. What's on a Hawaiian pizza besides pineapple? Doesn't it have like ham on it, I think? I think someone said they have bacon on them. Anyone guess what kind of pepper that is yet? We've got 25 of you here. He ate, went outside, but I would take him out again if you can. Okay, I'm on. Oh, you can't get in? That's weird. I didn't lock the top. Okay, I'll be back. Close, close. It is almost a ghost pepper. Holy ghost pepper, that's a funny term for it. Yeah, I just made a mistake. That is gonna come back to bite me. Yep. But yeah, don't answer the phone while you're doing a watercolor. But yeah, I gotta do let the wife in the apartment because something weird's going on with the top lock. So I will be back in less than a minute, hopefully. Okay, I am back. Like I said, you wrote cherry or dragon's breath. It is the one pepper that's hotter than the ghost pepper. I think it's the one that's a step above that. It's a step above the ghost pepper. And yeah, I bought them to paint them. Make hot sauce with them and use the seeds to grow more of them. Not that I don't have a garden, but I'll set up just like one little like plant pot of it, whatever you call it. What's a UV light? There you go. Yep. Hansel's dog is correct. Hansel dog wins the trophy. The trophy. Yes. This is a Carolina Reaper. Yes, yes, yes. This is a Carolina Reaper. You'll notice the tail on this pepper. If you find a pepper that has a tail, be careful. And I have somewhat between 20 and 30 of them. Double bagged. Why? Because I want to paint them. Like a Luis Melendez type painting, where he painted the figs, I think it was. And I want to do one of the Reapers. A painting of the Reapers. Yes, it is the Carolina Reaper. It did as it should. You can actually build a tolerance for those things, but still, we're not meant to consume that much of the capsaicin. So you gotta burn in moderation. Yesterday I had ghost pepper chicken wings. Why? Because I'm crazy, but it actually isn't. I don't think it's really ghost pepper, to be honest. It's spicy, but it's kind of spicy, more like a jalapeno, or not a jalapeno, a habanero. Habanero is usually the safe spot to draw the line. Once you get beyond that, it's kind of, you really have to build a tolerance before you have anything more than that, because it strikes fast. Yeah, I can understand you. So yeah, no, I can't handle the. I don't think I'd be able to handle the Reaper. As a hot sauce, yes, but as a pure pepper, no. Oh, but it is glad. I am glad to. It's glad to know. Is what I'm trying to say. It's glad to know. I'm glad to know that we can do these streams again. And I don't think I can subtract this, but I'm gonna try it. You can reactivate the watercolor, but I'm not certain if we can reactivate this. I think we can. I think we just did. We broke one of the laws of physics. Now, I don't suggest doing this a lot because I'm sure that it's going to eat up the paper. So just like erasing, you don't want to erase a lot with your drawing if you're going to, add paint onto it. Um, oh, you wrote Burns coming in and going. Yeah, I know. Yeah, definitely. It's something else. Yeah, they're getting that fixed. I mean, it's more their, you know, their life to get, but yeah, they're getting that fixed. But hopefully, as things go on, and I hope to be able to stay in this studio at least for like another year, and then get a bigger one. So like a whole year of us doing these 4 times a week. Of course, there may be times where if I take a vacation or something during the holidays or whatever, but yeah, we should be in here doing these 4 days a week for a year in here before we move into something bigger. And I do want to start having sales and stuff like that because gotta increase the monies so we can have a bigger studio. I was talking with the owner of the Billiard Academy, where I've got a bunch of references to paint people from, and he's willing to pose from life for a portrait. So eventually, one of my oil painting streams will be in the academy itself, and we'll paint. His name's Dion. We'll paint him from life. So that's in the works for a future live stream. So lots of ideas, different concepts. Yeah, drawing wise, I don't think I'll be able to subtract to get this back, but we can try. I think we can to some degree. I think we can. I did say that that was going to come back to bite me. That mistake there. Can't add too much water. I don't want it to drip. Yeah, so we're just going to let that be. Couldn't get that back. That's all good. All these different layers of yellow ochre. And it looks like it is. The paper is actually finally starting to behave. Yeah, the buckling is leveling out, I guess. Hey Jonas, welcome. The background adds not so much likeness to the, like if I had painted this background blue or purple, it wouldn't take too much from the likeness as it does with the color. So when I added the background, I added it right before the first break because I knew I would come back and start to add all these refinements in the color. So the background, in my opinion, with watercolor is the same as with the other materials, is that it adds more for the color variation. Hey Jazz W. As you might be able to tell, I've made a dent in the past the I keep saying pastel in the yellow ochre. So I'm preparing to do a wash there. So I'm gonna go from the top down to the bottom. Adding the pink. So I'm preparing for this gradation to take place. Gotta be careful not to lose your highlight. Once she's gone, she's gone. Gotta be careful with that highlight. Now we're gonna add a touch of more of the pink there. It's more of a peach kind of color. That's for that plane for the forehead. But still very careful. One mistake. And that's all she wrote. Okay. Well, that's a relief. We've worked our way up towards the paper. Of course, I'm going to leave that way for now. Going back to the pink, we're now going to close off that light because our brightest light must be up there. Oh, but before we do that, you want to work from side to side, so it makes sense to go back to the hair. Plane by plane. Planes, 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 planes. Remember, we're going to be able to reactivate the paint. So don't worry about it drying sharp. How do I make adjustments in drawing when using watercolor? From Jazz W. So what I do is I was working from light to dark. So all these initial washes were lighter, and then I go darker and darker as I'm more and more secure. So if I have to make a correction, say here, I'll go in with a dark. Maybe if I want to move the lip up, then I'll go slightly up with the dark, but I don't have that much room. So not as much room as for control or correction as you do with, say, acrylic. But you work from light to dark, and as you get more, say the forehead, this is a perfect example. So the forehead, he's not bald. So I gave myself more space to do that, to be able to return. So if I say made his forehead too big, I can cut back into it with the dark. So see light and then dark, going over it with dark for the correction, if I have to make one. But you know, if you make one mistake, if you accidentally add dark here, you can't take it out. You can somewhat, as you saw there earlier, you can adjust your drawing directly by going in with the paintbrush and shoveling that out. This used to be a dark, but I don't recommend doing that too much because I think that might mess the paper up. And one can always err on the side of caution and spend more time with the drawing. And I can only spend so much time with it because, you know, I got to create a painting by the end of 3 hours. And I can't go in with white paint for the gray hair. So I'm going to just let it be this color. I think that with watercolor, you can't really call it much of a watercolor if you go in with white. You can. Sargent did that, and he's Sargent, but um, I'm trying to avoid using the white as much as I can. Though you can, they do make it. Yes, this is watercolor. Yep, Tuesdays will be watercolors. So see how you have to preserve the light there? Because you can't just get white paint and go into that. So a little bit tricky, but doable. No worries, Lisa. We'll be here. We've got another hour. We'll take a break in about 3 minutes. Then we return for the impossible subtleties, as I call them. Oh, thanks, Amber. I'm glad you're painting along with me. Perfect, perfect. And we'll be here tomorrow as well. And the day after. Oh, you're always welcome. Nearly lost the white there. But if we lose it, it's all good. Can't get everything right. So if you find that you're a perfectionist and you don't want to be one, watercolor will fix that for you. So a lot of things you just kind of have to live with. Little mistakes in here and there. They start to creep up. Oh, all right. So it's time to take another break. This will be the last break of the evening. We will return, finish this painting up. Then we will return again and do it all over. Okay. But before that, I'm on to something here. Something that needs to be corrected. Yeah, I had to edit a little bit. Push this dark. That the facial hair ends up looking more like facial hair. Okay, so now we take a break. And we return. Finish this one. Thanks, Amber. All right, everyone, don't go anywhere unless you really have to. We'll be back in just a little bit. Alrighty then. Let's finish this painting. So first thing I'll do is adjust the light sensitivity. Kind of dark. There we go. So you can see it a little better. And the same thing as last time, actually. We're just gonna work this area and pretty much that'll be it. Get a new piece of paper towel. Feel free to ask any painting related questions. So far the only question I got was is this watercolor? So any questions you've got, let me know. Again, relying pretty heavily on the yellow ochre. This is kind of odd. It reminds me of Nelson Shanks, like the school that I went to in Philly called Incominati, Studio Incominati, except they used oil paint. But they let their oil paints dry like this on the palette, and they hold their paper towel, and I think it's easier to hold the paper towel with watercolor, and that's because you need to be able to adjust your ratio of water to paint as you go. So I'm taking little bits of paint off the brush, little bits of water at a time to be able to create these little mini washes. So it's kind of interesting how that came to be, and maybe it could be just because that's how I was trained to do oil paint, so I must have adapted it into watercolor. But it's interesting how that worked out. Let's see. No worries, Amber. Just wondering how you managed to manage perfectionism. Manage to manage perfectionism in painting. That's a good question. So what I would suggest is to always keep yourself somewhat emotionally distant from what you're painting. That is, avoid painting things that are very, like have a strong emotional, uh, say, I don't know what the right word is, but so my dad passed away when I was 13. So I did draw him when I was a kid, and it kind of bothered me because there's a kind of a emotional attachment to it. So if I were to tell my 13-year-old self, yeah, don't draw your dad because you're not going to be able to think objectively. There you go. That's the term. Try to remain as of objective, kind of like a detective gets kicked off the case if they're working. In these TV shows, a detective gets kicked off the case if they're too emotionally like connected to it. So paint things that aren't going to bother you if any mistakes happen. Manage perfectionism and paint. Oh, no worry. I know what you meant. Like how to not be overly like perfectionist about everything. It's hard to do. It also depends on personality. Different personality types. Like if your personality, you tend to be more, like obsessive over things. I'm like that too, though. Like I can't just leave the apartment without double checking that the door is locked. Like that's just part of my kind of obsessiveness. I always check that the doors are locked in my car. When I was a kid, I couldn't sleep in a room if the doors weren't locked. I always felt like I needed to have locked doors. Um, and I'm always kind of paranoid about whether or not I turned off the stove. Yeah, I guess you could call that forms of like, like obsessiveness. But you also experience. The more you do it, the less emotionally attached you become to the things that you paint. Good question. Yeah, the more you do it, the less emotionally attached you become. Experience also builds confidence. Like, especially in a portrait, in the early stages of a portrait, you have to be very confident in yourself and don't let mistakes get to you. Don't think negative thoughts as you're painting. Don't let these things get in your mind. And it's hard to control them also. Like if somebody says something about your painting and it ruins your day, like they say that the skin color looks like band-aids or something like that. Like one of my teachers told me, and I always pick on him over it, but I mean he was right. I needed to work on my colors at the time. Um I always need to work on my colors, but um yeah, you just it's kind of like working on your positive thinking as well. It's not universal. It's not just, universal to painting. I mean, this is things that you pick up from like sports psychology. This is a very active thing. Like, even though I'm sitting here, I don't mean active in a physical sense, but like mentally, uh, it can be mentally draining if you have to think about every brushstroke. If you have to think about every brushstroke while you're painting, you're going to tire yourself out, and it's not going to be as much fun. Well, no worries, Amber. Yeah, we all have different ways that our perfectionism comes out. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm like yeah, other things that I do. I don't like forks being put in the dishwasher or like knives being put in the dishwasher with the sharp end pointing up. I don't like that. Even sharp things like blades, like I make sure that they're always covered. I never leave exposed blades out. So you like things like mechanics, like I could never be a mechanic because there's always like exposed stuff that could mess you up. Gazelle. Would that be equivalent of counting steps that dancing takes the freedom and movement out of it makes you stiff? I mean, I don't know. The last dance I ever did was that's kind of interesting. The last dance I ever did was my first dance in the wedding. Um, so I can't really relate from a dancing standpoint, but I can only hypothesize that if you have to count every step, then potentially there might be a little micro pause in your dance routine, I suspect. So, yeah, in that sense, yeah, it could make you stiff if you have to count it. It's definitely something in pool as well that I can relate to. If you have to think about all the aspects of a pool shot, there's like hundreds of different aspects involved in it. And if you have to think about more than, say, 10 of them as you're shooting, you're going to miss or you're going to misposition yourself. It has to be instinctive at that point, especially in the middle of competition where you're basically running on autopilot. And imagine you're doing a live stream, you're painting for 3 hours at a time, multiple days a week. You know, you can't just sit there and put down a formula for the skin tone or the proportions of the face, or how you're going to layer the painting or whatever. Like, you can't do that. Of course, as I'm learning, I have to think more than I usually do, which is why I'm a little bit slower with watercolor. But eventually this will be just like the other materials. But in the beginning, you have to, just like a sport, you have to isolate different aspects of the game and train each individual part and then put the pieces back together. So for example, with watercolor, you got to work on doing washes, got to work on doing gradations, you've got to work on drawing, you have to work on values. But luckily, if you already got a background in, you know, oil painting, acrylic painting, and pastel painting, then all the other stuff is still intuitive. What I need to work on more is the layers. Like, how do I layer more efficiently next time so it doesn't take me this long to get to this stage? Those are things I gotta think about. So Grace Murphy, love double cheese and pepperoni or meat lovers pizza. Oh, that sounds good. So Hawaiian and Scotland, you wrote Hawaiian is ham and pineapple, not bacon. Amber, you've been painting for years, and this still happens, but still something to work on. Yeah, of course. Oh, thanks, Amber. Yeah. You build your confidence as you go, but things should start to become more intuitive as you get more experience. But it doesn't happen overnight. But if you have experience painting already with other materials, then you'll pick up, watercolor much faster. Because all you got to worry about is the paint handling. The rest is stuff you've already done before, but in other materials. But at this point in the demo or in the painting, I hate calling these demos, but at this point in the painting, I could say that these pans watercolors do help, especially in this stage. And you can custom make your own, just put tubes of, just pour out your watercolor tubes in the pans and then let them dry. Though realistically, anyone watching here, will anyone here be doing watercolor portraits? Because I know that it's a very difficult thing to do. It's much more difficult than the other ones in terms of drawing and not making mistakes. I'm curious if anyone here is going to do it. You can always comment as well if you're watching as a pre-recorded. And even though I'm not an expert in watercolor, I hope that these streams, as I progress with watercolor, I'll be able to, make it easier for people to learn it. Because I'm learning it myself. Yeah, but I do look forward to getting more watercolor tubes and buying these pans, making my own. So what I've learned thus far is you really don't want to spend too much time mixing. I do need to get something between yellow ochre and this is, I think it's raw umber. Need something in between them. I'm trying to mix on the pans, like the actual pan. I don't know if that's a good idea, but we'll guess we'll find out. Now the paint's getting thicker. Amber, you wrote, started out as a kid doing watercolors. He switched to oils and acrylics, blown away. It was so forgiving. Never did a big portrait. Well, it's not a big portrait. It's 8 by 10, but I started learning watercolor about like a month or two ago. Um, really, really tough one for me to learn. So this is definitely the most difficult of the 4 that I'm doing here on YouTube. Yeah, there's no need to juggle 3 brushes with watercolor. Yeah, it cleans up super easy. I've only been using one. Oh, no worries, Grace Murphy. All is well. Yeah, this is my third watercolor with this approach, as opposed to what you saw last time, which was more of a kind of a, a careful underpainting kind of development. This one is more of a kind of letting the looseness of the watercolor become part of the equation. And this is a like a lemon yellow. I don't know what it's gonna do, to be honest. I'm just gonna try it out. It's the lightest value here. So I'm curious if I can use it for the hair. I think I can. I didn't know I could do this. I just figured this out. And I hope this isn't, I don't think this is white paint. At least the portrait set said that it didn't have white paint on it. So that'll probably fade. But yeah, I didn't know I could do this. So I just contradicted myself from earlier. I mean, as long as it's not white paint and it's lighter than the wash, I guess it works. I mean, I guess if it works, it works. Yeah, it's, I agree, easy cleanup is another selling point of watercolor. They're perfect to travel with. I don't think I'll ever travel without watercolor, without a set like this. It's just so easy to just start painting. Whereas with oil paint and acrylic, there's all this cleanup. The Stay Wet palette takes up a lot of space. Then you gotta pour more acrylics as you go. I'm definitely gonna do some plein airs with this though. That's for sure in my agenda. I mean, not with this set, but I'll get another one. Like a landscape pan setup. I could just make my own. Um, do AI art beat time lapse? I don't know. It depends on who's watching and what they're trying to get out of it, but uh, AI art, from my limited knowledge, is more for commercial purposes. I mean, when it comes to fine art, by the definition of fine art, the lack their definition of a proper definition to fine art, anything goes, I guess. So that's why I say it depends on the viewer, what you want to get out of it. To me, no, I don't think so. I don't think AI, anything is anywhere close to, like what people can do in terms of, things like narrative. I don't know. I mean, I need to educate myself more with AI. Like, not that I'll use it, but what it's doing. I have seen a lot of those fake AI paintings, or people post things like they carved a portrait out of wood or something, and you can clearly tell it's an AI, or at least if you have a painting background, you can tell it's AI. But I think it's probably going to be something similar to like what photography was to painting back in the day. I'm sure there was a fear that it would take everything over, and to some extent it kind of did. But I mean, artists will always adapt. I mean, look at us. We're using YouTube as a form of art. To me, it's an art form. So to me, it's more than a demo. It's kind of like a theater of some sorts. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this out. I liked it at first, but I think it's a little too contrasty. So yeah, let's do that now. We'll still have it, but it won't be quite as dark, I mean, as light as it was before. So, question for everybody. What is your favorite material to work with? I'd say currently mine is pastel for portrait. But watercolor is kind of growing on me. When it comes to like a finished painting, I think I like acrylic more. For like if I was gonna do a big Caravaggio, I don't feel like waiting for oil paint to dry, so I'll use acrylic and then I'll probably paint it again on top of it again with oil paint and call it an oil painting. Um, my favorite for painting from life would be oil paint. Like alla prima, oil paint would be my choice. So, what is your favorite material to work with and why? And just like me, you could have a custom answer. Like I said, for just a standard portrait, I like pastel. Say I'm working from a picture, then yeah, pastel. Working from life, I would prefer oil paint. Um, a big studio project, I would rather use acrylic. Traveling, I would prefer watercolor. If I was to travel and paint all over the place, then yeah, watercolor. I'm guessing that's why Sargent used it so much. Because we know that Sargent traveled a lot. Or if we didn't know, now we know. Sargent was on the move. Hansel Dog, your favorite right now is charcoal. So you're learning to use it. Yeah, charcoal is great. The fundamentals of drawing and with mass, working with mass. Yeah, that green is starting to bother me. Um, I'm gonna go over it with something. I may mess the entire thing up, but you know, you live and you learn. Hmm. I've got a gold and a silver. There's no way I'm gonna use the gold and the silver. I got a metallic black. Let's try that. Probably not a good idea. I don't advise it because I don't know anything about it, and I think it's gonna be all sparkly. So I'm looking at it. Don't advise what I'm about to do, but yep, it's all sparkly. That thing is gonna get the daylights off my palette. If there's one thing I can't tolerate, it's sparkly paint. You gotta go. Bye. That's all I gotta say is bye. You need to leave. The metallic paint has exited the studio. I've got a bag of paints here. So anything metallic I would avoid like the plague. Unless that's the effect you're going for. Yeah, I'm just gonna use black. Keep it simple. Amber, you said you love watercolor for abstract. Sketchbook stuff for on the go. Oil paint for the finished stuff. Cool, cool. Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what I would probably do is start something with acrylic, paint it almost like to a finish, and then go in with oil paint. It will cut the time down by like half at least. Okay, that's a better color. So that's probably too much paint for watercolor standards, but hey, we're learning. I'll probably regret doing this. Or I won't. But I wanted a different background. That was starting to bother me. I'm gonna lower his shoulder a little bit. That's good for jewelry. The watercolor? Oh, I can see why. I'm glad you like the color for the background. Yeah, the camera is not really like, at least on my screen, you can't see it, but it's more of a dark green. Yeah, that green was a little too green, like out of the tube looking. This is a little more natural. And we'll do the usual watercolor gimmick where we let this stuff drip. I've seen some oil painters do this too. You can do this with oil paint as well. Just use a lot of solvent. Don't recommend it. As you can see, of course, I said that I would come back to regret that. So this is starting to buckle a little bit, but it always levels out. And if it doesn't, oh well, I'll just sandwich it in the glass frame. I'll just let this drift across. And putting that in shows me that this still needs a little more of something in it, I guess. Yellow ochre has been the go-to, so yellow ochre. Hey, Marshall, thank you. Oh, you wrote the metallic color for the jewelry. Oh. Yeah, I made the mistake of with my other palette. It's actually still on that palette too. The other palette that I had, I used the white paint when I was just learning. And this was like 2 months ago or so. And the white paint had sparkles to it, like sparkly stuff. And no matter what I tried to do, it wouldn't leave. It wouldn't go. So it was like it was just too much. Too much sparkly. I'm glad everyone likes the background choice. Backgrounds are tough to paint. You wouldn't think so, but they are. And this probably is the most water I've used in a watercolor. Because I'm almost out of water on my container, and that's unheard of. Yeah, so I'm glad that I started with the red in the beginning for the skin tone, because the last time I started with that raw sienna color, and I throughout the entire painting, I think it just was a little too yellow all throughout. And the red actually made it more blue, oddly enough, like pinkish or something. So that kind of worked. Like I said, I used a lot of water. I've got almost no water left in here. Not a good idea for a watercolor painting, but luckily I have some water here. So that's how much water I used. A lot. I have not let acrylic drip like that. No, I haven't. Probably another thing to try later on. Or maybe we can do that on Thursday. So key word of the day is mini washes. These are all little mini washes. That's how we got this subtlety. Just like that little wash right there, mini washes. So just a couple minutes left now. We are going to key the lights. So all the highlights that don't need to be highlights anymore are gonna get unhighlighted, basically. So this to bright. Worked our way up to the highlight. And I used the pink for that. The already kind of this pre-mixed pink here. Kind of worked. Worked our way all the way to the highlight. On the upper right with no paint on it. Oh, that was probably bothering you for a while. That's funny. Yeah, we missed the spot there. That was actually one of the highlights up there. There was a UFO behind his head, and it was flashing this really bright light. So we just had to cover the UFO. No, I'm just kidding. I'll use this to cover it. Thanks for pointing it out. I wouldn't have noticed that. So let's go ahead and cover that. It's not white anymore. It has been covered. Okay. Here's the white, or not the white, but whatever this is. I gotta look it up. I think it's a lemon yellow. But it's not white pink. But it's lighter than this. A lemon yellow. Works perfectly there. I didn't think that could be done, but I guess I can. I wonder how many people were bothered by that that spot that I missed. Kind of funny. I didn't even know. Yeah, no worries. Here, we'll add a second layer to it, just to be sure. A second layer. That is all covered. So I guess that is 3 hours. I didn't realize it. So I guess that's all we got. So remember, watercolor will be Tuesdays. Oil paint is Wednesdays. Acrylic is Thursdays. Pastel is Fridays. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel in case you have not subscribed. In case I have to miss a day or so, like what happened last week. But the goal is to continue to be here 4 days a week. Let's go ahead and sign this. And then we will sell it. Okay, it's got a signature. It's official. And this will be the point where I'll ask if there are any last minute questions. Any last minute questions? And later tonight I'll post the stream info or the stream link for tomorrow's portrait in oil paint. Thanks, Hansel Dog, Marsha, Giselle. Thank you, thank you. So yeah, I think I'll recommend this. These colors, these pan watercolors. Worked out pretty well. Okay, so it looks like there are no last minute questions. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I wish you the very best. And I'll see you tomorrow.